Morning glories. I think she was hoping that I would be that beautiful morning glory in the morning. And that's why she kept saying it. I think I probably was as a child, but as an adolescent and a young adult, I was much more of a snapdragon. Now there's coffee, right? It helps us move in the morning. In following our annual theme this month, it's on self-care, which is a topic I've not always given much attention to. But live events over the past couple of years have helped me to see that self-care is a powerful spiritual practice that helps me remember who I am and what I came here to be. It's very much like the instructions about the oxygen masks, put the mask on yourself because we need to put it on ourselves before we can be of any use to anybody else. And this week, we as a collective community are looking at balancing the experience of grief with the reality of joy. Grief is an emotion that we all go through at some point in our life, like death and taxes. It's inevitable and unavoidable. We grieve the loss of family and friends, partners, siblings, parents. We grieve the loss of relationships, whether by divorce or changed circumstances. We grieve the loss of jobs and careers and changes in our communities. Have you ever driven through a town that you haven't been in a while and noticed how much it's changed? Wait a minute, that used to be something else. It's that sense of loss, of grief of what used to be. We grieve the loss of innocence in ourselves and our children. And we grieve our empty nests and the loss of a beloved animal companion. Grief is natural and normal and necessary because we form attachments to people, places, and things. I suppose we always have the choice to become Zen Buddhists and strive to be unaffected and unattached and not have that pain of loss. But I chose long ago to risk the pain of loss in order to feel the joy and comfort of connection. I always think of detachment as being this very narrow range of emotional expression. And while I don't want all the highs and lows of soap opera drama, I do want a range where I can get an ebb and flow, a high and low. So I've accepted that with connection is going to come loss because things change. But it doesn't mean that I'm a victim of grief, nor do I see myself as a survivor. More, I see myself as being able to swim, or at least float in the ocean of grief until I'm able to stand on solid ground again. Grief in and of itself is neither good nor bad, yet it is an emotion that must be attended. I loved the Rumi poem, The Guest House, in this morning's meditation. It's a nice way of thinking about grief. It is a visitor to your house. It's a guest, and it must be attended to. But this is not a place for spiritual bypass. Grief and loss hold wisdom for us. They give us a chance to see things we may not have wanted to see. It provides perspective and wisdom if we allow it to lead us into the light before it passes out of our guest house. It will lead us to the light. For grief is a darkness of both feeling and vision. The light is always with us. I have a strong background in child development, and from one writer, I received the image of the 7-year change when the indestructible child part of us suddenly realized that we are not all powerful. And that awareness can come in multiple ways, but the feeling as if a rug has been pulled out from under us. Nothing is ever the same again. We leave the Garden of Eden, never to return. Deep, deep grief does that to us. It pulls the rug out and opens us into a time of painful questioning. Who am I? Why did this happen? What am I supposed to do now? Where do I go from here? These are powerful spiritual questions. Our adult mind knows all about disease and changing economic conditions and accidents, but intellectual reasoning does us no good in the immediate onset of grief. Much like falling in love, deep grief can sweep out what we thought we knew about life. Often it begins a time of regret and self-criticism, that whole litany of we could have, should have, would have done if we'd known. The mind shuts down and there is confusion. So what can be done? First and foremost, stand in your faith. Every spiritual teacher reminds us to maintain a daily practice so that we have developed a place of faith on which to stand. Where is your faith? I know that there is an infinite power for love and good, and that I can use it. I can trust that the law always works. I know that I'm surrounded and supported by an infinite power, and it always works for and supports my good. I know that it is my own beliefs and my fears that I have to face down and change. Nothing out there is going to get me or harm me. I know that whether it looks like it at the moment or not, everything works for my good. No matter the disease, the diagnosis, the condition, the apparent loss, I can grow to be bigger than my pain and more than my fear. And I know that our emotions are not a permanent condition. Feelings change and adapt like waves in an ocean. I have to remember that I know how to surf through the waters of grief and that I will come to shore again. But like any pain or fear, grief is something I must go through. If I try a spiritual bypass and pretend it does not exist, I open myself to being trapped into holding on to the past or fearing the future. I always have the power of choice, and I do not choose to be trapped. I choose to grow. I choose to stand in faith, my faith, and I choose to not do it alone. In addition to faith, you and I have a tremendously supportive spiritual community and a spiritual teaching that is so strong and comforting and sensible. Science of Mind teaches that every individual is a perfect spiritual being, having a human experience. Grief doesn't make us imperfect. Grief makes us more open and pliable so that the love within us can connect us more deeply to the people around us and the love within us. Remember that image from Kahlil Gibran about love kneads us like bread so that we become more pliable and can rise? And what is it that acts like yeast to rise us? Love and joy. Last month, we talked about the balance of light and dark, the shadow and the light. And I was gifted with a powerful image that is so perfect for today's talk of grief and joy. It was that the stars can only be seen at night. We can only see the stars because of the darkness. The stars are always out. They are always shining. But it takes the dark for us to see them. It's always a both and rather than either or. Shadow and light, grief and joy. For me, the moments of joy in the midst of grief or pain are like the stars at night. Joy is always there. I just don't always see it. Happiness comes and goes because it's based on conditions and circumstances. But joy lives in the heart. Joy is an energy of God. Have you all studied Thomas Troward's 7 qualities of God? Those generic aspects or energies of God that are our divine inheritance. And because they are the essence of God expressed, they are ours. Light, love, light, power, peace, beauty, joy. Joy is not at the tail end of that list. It is the culmination. It is the coming together of all of those qualities. And the source of joy is within each of us, always here and ready to be expressed through us. Just like the stars, always shining. Grief is the other side of joy that we experience in this human journey. And when looked at straight in the face, grief can be the messenger that we have been needing to catapult us to the next level of our greater yet to be. When my father died, my mother was furious, just furious. He had been many, many good things, but a financial genius, he was not. When he retired after 30 years in the military, he didn't sign up for the survivor's benefit plan. Think of it as a retirement plan. So when he was offered it later, Mother made sure that he signed up for it. But he had to live for 2 years before the benefits would start. He made it 15 months, not even close. His life insurance was made out to his mother, who'd been gone for 25 years. He had a simple savings account in the bank, no investments. It was a financial mess. They had had an agreement, and he literally failed to live up to it. His death was a very rude awakening to what my mom had not been paying attention to in her life. My father had been a very functional alcoholic also, and my mom had been losing herself, her joy in life, her self-confidence, her purpose. She was pushed into waking up and taking charge of her life. And she more than met that life task and ended up being full of joy and activity and connections. But at the beginnings of grief, it's about feeling the feelings. The most important activity to do while grieving is to be with it. Don't try to push it away, ignore it, or pretend it's not there by getting yourself so busy that you have no time to discover what it's trying to tell you and to mourn and let go of what has been lost. Grief will propel you to be and to have your heart's desires. But as we teach, it all comes through us, not to us. And we will travel this journey in our own time, not anyone else's timeline. I tend to be very private when I'm in pain. Like many, I hide. But even if you retreat, you can still let your feelings out. When I realized my first marriage was over, I was grieving the loss of a future with a partner and children. And I would put Joni Mitchell's Blue album on, and I would dance and cry until I was exhausted. I let my feelings out. I felt my feelings, and I mourned for all that I thought I'd lost and would never have. Turned out I was wrong, but at the time, loss was all that I knew. Deep grief shows us our deepest beliefs and fears. It's the darkness that already exists in us, our shadow, not to shame us, not to belittle us, but to give us the opportunity to look at those fears and beliefs and decide, to choose, to let them go if they no longer serve our good. And in the darkness of grief, or the darkness of our fears, there will always be the sparkling starlight of joy peeking through. In my family, we go to the dark side of humor. Remember the Charles Addams cartoons, The New Yorker? So I get nods here. People remember these? When my mother married my father, she had 2 out-of-control children. Their wedding present to each other was a Charles Addams book of cartoons. You all remember Wednesday and whatever his name was? Yeah. We thought that was hysterical when we as kids found it 25 years later. We take comfort where we find it, dark humor or not. Some people have a hard time with humor or joy in the midst of grief. I like to think of it as akin to the comic relief that shows up in action movies, often absurd, but always needed to break the tension. And those sparks of joy in the midst of grief and sadness are signs of hope. We will not always be in the ocean of our grief. It helps to be with people, when you can, who are both compassionate and joyful. Letting joy overwhelm the mind now and then is healthy. Joy heals both body and mind. Finding or even just recognizing and appreciating another's joy is not forgetting or dishonoring the one you are grieving or the life that you no longer have. Hold your grief loosely. Let it ebb and flow. Watch for it wants. Watch for where it wants to harden into self-pity and bitterness. Again, grief will naturally ebb and flow. Loosen your hand and let it ebb and flow. That the world continues with all its beauty and joy can be seen that it's proof that beauty and joy are indestructible. And then when you are at a different stage in your grief journey, beauty and joy will still be there for you. It's a matter of perspective and timing. For those of you who are witnessing another's journey of grief, please remember that it is their journey, not yours. You may also be grieving, but you will each have your own journey. It is possible to be companions and share, but grief essentially is a solo journey. When my sister's husband and my most beloved brother-in-law died about 2 years ago, I found myself saying one thing over and over to her: just breathe. Cry and breathe. It's all you have to do right now. I wish I was there to hold you. Just breathe. Turned out it was more helpful than anything else I tried to say. A friend of mine calls that just being the dog. Those of you who have dogs know that when we hurt, our pets comfort us just by being present, laying on our feet, laying on the bed with us. They don't try to change us or tell us how to grieve or ask when we're going to get over it. They just are present in their love. So while no one welcomes or wants grief, it seems to be one of those defining experiences that break us open in order to let in more light and more love. We have the opportunity to go beyond our self-limiting beliefs and break down the walls that we have built up around our hearts. And we all build walls around our hearts. that have to be torn down. The French writer and political activist Émile Zola famously said, "If you ask me what I came to do in this world, I will answer you. I am here to live out loud." CSL's theme this year is living out loud. Earlier in the year, we spent a month on cultivating authenticity, which is another way of saying being fully present in our own life. We spent a month on the power of vulnerability and another on how curiosity can be our superpower, leading us into a life of discovery and wonder. These are all tools to help you live through grief. We are not here to hide. We came to discover all of who we are and all of what we can do. We are powerful spiritual beings, and we came here to live out loud and proud. Hidden in our grief are the seeds of our expanded life, just waiting to grow and bloom. Grief allows us to prepare the soil for these seeds that we may not even have known that we had inside us. To close, when you find yourself in grief, stand in your faith, or sit, or squat, or hold on to it desperately, but stand, hold on to your faith. Know that you have everything you need to surf the dark ocean you find yourself in. There is an infinite power for good, and you are living in it. Don't go it alone. Find a grief group that works for you, whether in person or online. Use trusted friends that will let you cry and help you to remember to breathe. Look for those sparks of joy. Again, they are like the stars, always there. In the chat for this program, I've listed a couple of books and a website that you might find helpful. There are many powerful and moving resources. Look for the ones that speak to you. And when you forget just how powerful you are, when your faith seems to have gone on vacation, call your minister or a practitioner. Heck, call me. It is our privilege and honor to mirror your light back to you. Now, if you will do me the honor of joining me in prayer, we'll close this out. There is a power for good, a power of love that weaves itself throughout life. Before space and before time, this love was present, and it unfolds at life. As the song says, this love will carry me. This love that created the world, that created me, carries me and carries you in its embrace. Always lifted by love, guided by love, wrapped in love. We exist, we move, we have our being. And every cell in my body vibrates to that love, to that healing that is love. Every muscle, bone, tissue, organ, and system is alive with the possibility, the knowing of vibrant health. And this love moves through my relationships with people, with money, with resources. with creativity. I am love expressed in the world. Hear yourself say that in your mind. I am love expressed in the world. And it doesn't get any better than that. And so I put this knowing, these words, into the law of mind, knowing that it is already done because I have simply recognized the truth. And it shines so bright, so true. And so with gratitude and thanksgiving, I accept all that is good, all that is. And I ground this by saying, and so it is.